And welcome to HBCU Biz on Fire. That's right, HBCU Biz on Fire, where we have conversations. That's right, conversation. No, we don't interview. We have conversations with entrepreneurs, pathfinders, and innovators. And they just so happen to have graduated from HBCUs. And it's not just not so happen, but hey, we'll talk about that later in a different form. Today I'm excited about our guest, Marc Davenport, a gentleman that I've recently met, and just, I mean, he's a dynamic guy, and so as we're going through and sharing about his journey and learning about his journey, I really want you to just dial in and listen to some of the key things that he'll be able to help you with, because the purpose of this conversation is to help you see one thing that will help you say, I can do this. Hey, I can grow to my next level. That's all you need. If you just keep doing that, great things will happen. So I want to welcome Marc Davenport, a Norfolk State. That's right, a Spartan. I mean, gosh, man. I mean, how many people can say they're a real Spartan, Marc, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. And let me just start by saying that I'm honored to spend time with you, and I appreciate the invitation. And I respect the love that you have for HBCUs.
No, man, it's been entrenched in me, and so let's jump right into it, man. Norfolk State, North Virginia. Guy came from Brooklyn, coming down to Norfolk. Even though Norfolk is a southern city, I know what you said when you first came down, but share that experience when you first came on campus and knew, hey, I'm a student here. What was that experience like?
It was a culture shock. Both my parents are from Virginia. So I used to go down south a couple of times. I've been down south a few times, but I was always in the country in Gloucester, Virginia, which is probably about an hour, maybe 90 minutes from the Norfolk State campus. And I remember when I first came on the yard, I know this sounds crazy, but people would walk down the street and speak to me, and I would stop and roll my eyes at them. And I didn't like it. I'm like, why are you speaking to me, right? And the second or third day I was in Norfolk, a bunch of guys who I became great friends with later, walked by and they spoke to me, and I just rolled my eyes and kept on going. And one turned around, a fellow named Jack turned around and said, "What's the matter, Stick? You can't speak?" And I lost it, right? I'm like, I have a man question why I'm not speaking to him. So I'm getting ready to get into a fight with 5 people because I didn't speak back. And a buddy of mine that I had met who had been down there for a minute walked over to them and said, "Look, he just came from Brooklyn. He doesn't know any better." And he said, "Dav, my friends call me Dav." He said, "Dav, you're in the South. When someone speaks to you, you have to speak back." So that was my first eye-opening experience on the campus of Norfolk State University.
You bring up an interesting point there, that because a lot of times people say there's no diversity on HBCU campus, just because we all have the same melatonin or different shades of the same, color. But talk about that, man. I mean, that diversity, and I know when you talked about New York, I'm thinking about a guy that, he was my graffiti artist when I ran for class president, spray painted my sheets, but it was graffiti art, and he was from New York. And I'm trying to remember his name, but talk about that diversity and how that helped you grow. I mean, because you had to grow right there. I mean, immediately you grew through that interaction.
The most impactful decision I ever made in my life was attending Norfolk State.
Wow.
So I'm a project kid, right? I grew up in the projects downtown Brooklyn, and I graduated from a high school, Fort Hamilton, that was probably 85% white. And I remember my sophomore year in high school, we had race riots, and there were only probably about 30 people, Black people, in my graduating class of a high school with about 5,000 or 6,000 students. So I went from basically an all-white high school to an all-Black HBCU. And I knew one person growing up that had a car. His name was Larry Dunn. He had a 72 Chevy Nova. And when I arrived on the campus of Norfolk State, there was a student parking lot in front of the Twin Towers. And the parking lot was full of cars, and they were nice cars. And as I got to know people and to make friends, I met people that grew up in houses. Their parents and their grandparents might have been college graduates. They had cars. And, I didn't realize until I arrived on the campus of Norfolk State that I truly came from humble beginnings, because everyone that I knew in terms of their economic status was either where I was, a notch below, or maybe a tad bit higher. So Norfolk State opened my eyes to the fact that there was a large and well-to-do, not just Black middle class, but an upper middle class. And I loved it.
And that was a great thing about it. And, when you're in the Twin Towers, and every campus has that dorm, that iconic dorm. Ours was the freshman complex, Jones and Bowley Hall. And, you were, it brought you together with folks from backgrounds. I was a country boy from Mississippi, and one of my roommates was, from Chicago. So very diverse backgrounds. 100%. And, as you think about that, but talk about as you dive in and you begin to walk through this journey at Norfolk State, talk about one of those professors that just really still sticks with you in your heart, and just did something to help you be a better man and a better person.
Well, the dean of the Norfolk State Business School was Mr. Sanford Perkins. He taught accounting. And there was a professor that I took my business law classes with named Professor Wayman Parson. And Dean Perkins, Dr. Perkins, became a surrogate grandfather to me. He saw something in me, and he used to talk to me about opportunities that were available to someone like me that weren't available to someone like him when he was my age. And I always had a love and affinity for numbers, but what Dr. Perkins taught me, he taught me that numbers are important because they show you how money is made. And he also told me something that I've been teaching my clients ever since, which is, if you don't understand your numbers, you can never possibly understand business. So Professor Perkins was the first role model I ever had really in business.
He taught you one of the core principles, because everything is ran by numbers. Bottom line, we're in the midst of a pandemic as we do this interview, and that's all you're hearing are numbers, whether good or bad, no matter what side you're on, it's about numbers. And so when you think about it, he taught you that core principle. And I always say that principles are few and processes are many. But if you understand those core principles, you can apply them to different processes, different industries. And I think that's something that's real key. But when you talk about Mr. Perkins, and you think about that interaction, how did that cause your mind to expand? Because you talked about this kid coming from the projects in Brooklyn to a country city school. Yes, because Norfolk State is in the town of Norfolk, but it is a small southern city. Okay, so need we say anymore? But with that said, how did that cause your mind to grow, these kind of interactions?
Well, people of my generation, baby boomers, we were taught and raised to go to school, get an education, and get a job, put in your time, retire with benefits and a watch. And what Professor Perkins made me realize was I had other options. And one of those options would be to think about a business, think about building a business, understanding that if you can build a business, you can develop you can achieve freedom, you can achieve financial independence, and you could pave a way for future generations, but you have to understand numbers. And so Professor Parsons owned a restaurant on Granby Street in Norfolk, and he taught business law 1 and 2. And I would sit in the front row of the class, and after class, he would teach me the restaurant game, right? And I was curious about it. So the first business that I was really taught anything about was a restaurant business. And he took an interest in me because, you know, most people that have known me for the last 40 odd years from college will tell you I've always been a pretty serious guy. And I looked at Professor Perkins and I looked at my business law professor. One was an academic, the other one was an academic, but also an entrepreneur. And
Right.
Mr. Parsons' model really appealed to me because he was doing more than one thing.
Well, you know, the other thing I think is that he gave a sense of credibility because he could teach you the principle, but he can show you the application. I mean,
And he was street smart, which I loved.
he was what now?
Which I loved. Boy, he had the gift of gab. He was good. He was good.
You know, when you say that and you think about that whole power of mentoring, you know, if you would just dive a little deeper at a couple other instances, because you know, and it has not failed me yet. When I look at successful people, you know, there's a transition. Hey, I come in as this raw freshman, bright eyes, depending on the era. I know my era was, we had the penny loafers, you know, you put a dime in it to say you were really shining in the penny loafer. So you may remember those.
I had a pair.
Okay.
Quarter van in black. I had them, but I had pennies. I couldn't afford a dime.
You know, you scrounge and put a dime in it just sometimes to do that. But then as you kept progressing, there was somebody that always, as I say, put that hand around you, and sometimes had to hold you tight just so they can get your attention. But then as you begin to progress through those junior, senior years, talk about that sense of pride that you were beginning to feel because you were accomplishing and you were, you know, moving, you pledged, you started doing other things. Now you become the man, or you become that person on campus as you found your own groove.
Well, you know, it's interesting, but it's important for me to take a step back for a second. I never had a black male teacher. Never had a black teacher until I got to college.
Wow.
Never. So just being in the hallway and being exposed to that was just amazing. So when I pledged, my dad died a couple of weeks after I pledged, and I had no intention of coming back to school because I was concerned about my mom. And I got calls. I had professors who were actually calling the house to check on me and to make sure that I was coming back. And when I came back and I got involved into my fraternity and I got involved in some leadership positions around the campus, you know, I can probably think of about 6 to 10 grad brothers who, I don't know what they saw, but they saw something in me.
Yeah.
Right. I remember one of my professors gave me a journal, and he said, you know, he encouraged me to write down my thoughts and my feelings and my plans, because not only did I lose my father, but I lost my mother when I was in college. And I had the first of 3 knee procedures when I was in college. And I broke my hand and my arm while I was on my motorcycle. So I had 4 events that happened to me when I was in college that really, really rocked me. And I don't know what my life would have looked like if I had not been embraced by the male professors and men that saw something in me and were grooming me. There was a building on campus named Brown Hall, and he's named after an outfield. and his W.C. Brown Hall, George Brown Hall, and his son was a very revered, very respected alpha man in the Tidewater area. Him and brother Willie Sutton, and they used to hold me to a standard. They used to check on me, and they used to talk to me. We had a brother named Charles Jennings who was a medical student at Meharry College. I had a brother named, there was just a lot of people who would monitor me and ask me. They would ask about my grades. They would ask about how I was doing. They would ask if I had any money. They were asking what I was thinking about doing after college, because I wanted to go to law school. But, you know, because of the events that happened, that didn't make sense. So I had a lot of people that showed great interest in what the next phase of my life was going to be. And because I lost both of my parents, I think they helped fill the void that I had in my life. So I had people that I could talk to, and I had people who I could talk to that would respect the privacy of the subject matter. But I had a lot of people asking me, what did I plan on doing? And I was sort of steered into business. I was sort of steered into business because people thought I had an aptitude for that. I don't know.
That's the thing about it is people see things in you that you don't see in yourself.
Exactly.
And but what you just shared there to me really talks about that extended family that we've always had in the Black community, but that extended family is prevalent at HBCUs. I mean, to this day, I know having a store here during normal times, my wife always would ask me, okay, who are our kids this semester? Because I would have 2 or 3 students working at the store, and out of the 3, one would, you need more attention or just become closer, and just from whatever. And sometimes you're taking them, they come to your house to do this, or you're taking them to the airport, or just say, hey, let's go have lunch or dinner. Kind of like these gentlemen that put their arms around you and say, hey, Marc, we're not going to let you fail, man. We're here for you. Life threw you a curveball, but hey, we got your back. And to me, that is what HBCU is about. As we get ready to go to break here, we're going to come back and just really just talk about how Marc has soared since HBCU days, how Marc took those lessons and all that great nurturing and used that as a solid foundation to move forward with, because that's really what HBCU is about. It's a launch pad. you're gonna get pushed out of the nest now. You can't be a career student. Believe it or not, we do graduate. Okay, people graduate from HBCUs. But hey, so we're gonna take a short break, and we got a couple messages from some of our sponsors, and we'll be right back on HBCU Biz Radio, where it's HBCU Biz on Fire. Hey, welcome back to HBCU Biz on Fire. Hey, this is Howard. I'm here with Marc Davenport. He's one of he checks several of these boxes because, on HBCU Biz on Fire, guess what? We're talking to entrepreneurs, pathfinders, and innovators. So I love it when I get those guys and ladies that check more than one box, okay? And that's what we try to do. But more importantly is, as we have a conversation, now I want you to listen in and to learn from their journey and ask, what can I utilize to help myself move to the next level? And then as I reach back, help others grow to their next level. So that's what we're going to talk about. So Marc, let's jump right into, hey man, you graduated, unfortunately you didn't have your parents there with you, but you probably had a whole other family now that done adopted you as they kids or their brothers and sisters. And just talk about that graduation date and what was in your mind when you were headed out of Norfolk State.
It was bittersweet because my parents, that was an experience that they would not be a part of.
Yeah.
And I was ready to go back to New York. I was ready to start my career, and I wanted to make sure whatever it is, whatever decisions and choices that I made, they would be proud of me. And I think that was very, very important. I was a little was a little disappointed because I couldn't follow my brother's footsteps and go to law school. And my oldest brother, who was my hero, I mean, he was just a larger than life character on many levels. And he had a very successful career as a commodities trader on the street. And so I went to work on Wall Street as a financial advisor, took a bunch of exams, and was with Prudential Securities, and didn't know a soul or anyone with any money, right? Project kid. And if you're new in the business, you have a quota of assets under management that you have to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was responsible for bringing in $10 million in my first year to keep the job. And I didn't have a clue. So I went to my brother for advice, and he said, wealthy people buy municipal bonds. So learn everything you could about municipal bonds, become the bond king. And he told me something that became a foundational piece for my personal business philosophy, which is your income reflects the clientele that you service.
Break that down a little bit, because I think that's something that transfers over to, consulting businesses, which a lot of our audience are consultants and coaches. Break that down a little bit, if you would, Marc.
Well, I coach a lot of people, and one of the biggest challenges that neophytes in business have is they come to market with products and services that are not reflective of the value that they bring to the marketplace. And so what they do is they make decisions based on fear as opposed to market research and data. So instead of polling the audience or polling potential prospective clients, they make a decision that, well, I can only sell this at this price because if I really sold it for what I believed it was worth, no one would buy from it. So there's a lot of negative self-talk. And so first and foremost, people should be really mindful and careful about what they say when they talk to themselves, because Howard, your subconscious is that powerful. You become what you think you are. And so a lot of people find themselves doing a lot of work, giving a lot of value, but not being able to make it because the pricing that they put in place is not sufficient enough to generate a profit. So the fundamental reason why you start a business is to generate a profit. And without profits, you don't have a business.
Yeah, one of my favorite books over the last 4 or 5 years now 4 years, is Profit First.
There you go. Great book. Great book.
Great book, great principle. And as you talk about that value, so as you became the Municipal Bun, and I want to say that because some people, when they think buns, they think the negative side of it. But as you grew through that, and this guy that had to build a network of people, earn that trust in order just to stay in the job. What did that do for you? Now that you've moved over and you're helping other business owners grow their business, what is it that you took from there that you can walk out and help someone else tomorrow?
With a desk and a phone, you can accomplish anything, as long as you're not afraid to pick it up and talk to people. With a desk and a phone. And I can't tell you how many of my friends and colleagues launched and still run multi-million-dollar businesses that they started from cold call. Number one. Number two, confidence comes from winning. So people that I've learned, that I've met, the most successful people that I know are the most secure people that I know. And confidence comes with winning. And so when you talk to people and their eyes are lowered and their body posture is suspect, it's because they're not communicating, speaking from a position of power, confidence, or strength. So there's really only two types of people: people who believe they can and people who don't. Did I answer your question?
No, you gave me some great stuff, because that is really what walks out there. And then, as you work as a coach and with your clients, how do you help them transfer what you just shared? How do you help them own that process? Because it's one thing to say, okay, yeah, mindset makes a difference, but how do I implement this and how do I overcome the no's? Because you're going to have that desk and phone, but there's going to be a lot of no's.
Well, you know what? Mindset is being talked about so much, it's become almost a cliche.
Yeah.
To me, execution is more important than mindset, right? You can say you're going to do something and people talk about it all the time, but execution is important. And one of the things that I've learned is because I've made a lot of cold calls in my life, a lot more than most. And one of the things that I've learned is understand the most valuable commodity you have is your time. I don't spend time talking to people who really aren't that interested in talking to me. And so when you become a master salesperson, when you become proficient, you learn how to ask questions, the type of questions that convey information that you need to determine whether or not this person has a budget that can afford you, whether or not this person has a real business, whether or not a person is just kicking tires or he's ready to buy, whether or not you've got a person who can actually say yes. Because oftentimes people spend a lot of time with people who can't say yes, they can only say no. So one of the things that I've learned is to value my time by making sure that I'm having conversations and engaging with people who have an interest in learning how I can help them. Then it's up to me to determine, it's up to my skills, et cetera, to convert that person to a client.
No, definitely. And because if the interest's not there, then it's, it's almost like dating. Uh, I'm married now, but hey, if a young lady, if I hollered at you, as we used to say in the day, and you didn't have interest, I'm fine with that. Okay. I mean, hey, we wasn't for each other, but I'm okay with that. As you move forward here, Marc, talk about your latest venture here, because it was something that just really intrigued me in what you're doing and as it relates to helping Black and Brown businesses get into this tech arena and specifically, but really understanding the being, as I coined it a little bit, being capital VC ready. How do you get VC ready?
Well, you know what? Young folks out here have opportunities to do things that people like you and I never even dreamed about 20, 30 years ago. So I recently became a consultant with the Brown Venture Group, which is a venture studio, venture capital firm headquartered out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And one of the principals I've known for a very, very long time. And I wanted to align myself with them because their mission is very simple. Their mission is to support Brown founders, men and women of color who are doing and creating interesting things in the tech space. So what we want to do is we want to not only invest in them, and provide them with the capital they need to scale, to come to market, to build a prototype, et cetera. But we want to make sure that we equip them with the skills and expertise and systems necessary to put them on a road to success. And so we are in the process right now raising our first fund. And when that fund closes out, we're going to begin to invest in the best and brightest founders of color that we can find. And so we're very, very excited about it.
Explain to a listener how that process works, because people hear about VC funds and venture capitalists. One is, you said closing out, explain that briefly. And then the second part is what does a conversation as a startup or as an entity that's looking for VC funding, what does that conversation look like?
Well, the fundamental difference between a VC and a private equity is a person who invests in private equity is going to buy controlling interest in an existing company, not a startup. So a private equity firm does not invest in a startup.
Gotcha.
Right. So for example, Michael Dell's company was acquired by a private equity firm. Right. And a venture capitalist is going to invest in a startup. And ideally, we want to identify and support and fund the next unicorn. And a unicorn is a startup we believe has the potential to develop to have $1 billion market valuation, right? And so we consider a company like that a unicorn. So Ring, the company that makes the security devices, they were a unicorn, and they were acquired actually by Amazon for maybe $1.4 billion back in 2018. So
Right.
what we want to do is, there are a lot of very smart people out there who have ideas. Okay. We want people who have an idea but can build a business around the idea, around their business plan to execute, come to market, and make money doing that. And so I have someone that I'm working with right now, for example, and he's got a company called Finance Us. He's coming to market this month, and he's going to disrupt the predatory loan industry.
Hmm.
And a piece of advice I gave him was, he wanted to hire someone to build his app for him. And I told him, I want you to build your own app. He's got a very strong tech background. And the reason why I wanted him to build his own app, number one, because it would prove that he's a great custodian of his private capital, meaning that's money, instead of spending or paying someone to build something for him, he could do it himself. But number two, when he builds this app out, it's going to be a heck of a journey. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be painful. He's going to doubt himself. He's going to have highs and lows. But when he gets through it, he could stand in front of Brown Ventures. He can stand in front of a group of investors and tell an amazing story, because he knows the minute details
Yeah.
of his business from the inside out. So have an idea, put a business plan together, make sure that you can stand in front of someone like me or someone like you with all the confidence in the world and talk about how you're going to execute this business model. And you know what? Just think Shark Tank. The only difference is, maybe, maybe we'll be a little kinder, and we're not worth the kind of money, obviously, that those guys are worth. But you have to be able to convince the other side that you can do everything you said you can do and execute it at a very high level. And there's a demand, a real demand and appetite for what you built.
I think you said two things there, and I mean, you basically gave a brief lesson on VC, and is being able to execute, number one, and make sure there's a demand, for what you're doing, and quantifying those things. And then that third thing, I love what you did with the young man, the young person that build your own app. Sometimes you got to feel the pain of the growth versus outsourcing the pain. When you feel the pain, it's a different piece. But when you outsource it, you really don't have a full appreciation for all parts of it. And that's really what you were saying to him in a way that it. And so I challenge any, young entrepreneur, any business owner that's looking to grow to the next level, start a new venture, is experience the pain, because you're going to learn through that pain. You're going to learn through that pain. And so I challenge you to do that. So, Marc, how can people connect with you as we get ready to wrap up here? How can people connect with you?
I'm easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn, RMI Capital. You can find me on Facebook, RMI Capital LLC. You could Google me, RMI Capital. I think across social media, I probably have 100 plus 5-star reviews. So, I've been around, I've got a lot of gray hair and I don't have much hair left, but I've been around long enough to establish a big enough footprint where if you just type in Marc with a C, Davenport, or RMI Capital, you'll find me.
That's right. That's Marc Davenport. That's Marc with the C now, capital. The C stands for capital. For those of you old enough to know Fred G. Sanford, this is Marc Davenport with the C, and that's for capital. And you can, connect with them at our RMI Capital, correct? RMI Capital.
RMIcapital.com, LinkedIn, RMI Capital, Instagram, RMI Capital. And one of the things, Harold, that I really instill in my clients is whatever name you decide to call your business, make sure it's easy for people to find, because the marketplace isn't going to jump through a lot of hoops. They're not going to put in a lot of extra work to find you. So whatever it is you choose, make sure it's not long, it's easy to pronounce, easy to spell, easy to type, and you become easy to find.
Hey, you want to make sure of that, and if you can keep it under 10, that's you're doing great. 10 letters.
RMI Capital.
Yeah, that's it. And so Marc has done that. So Marc, thanks again for coming on HBCU Biz on Fire. We appreciate all these nuggets you've dropped, man. I got to clean up the floor here when we get off, because there's stuff all over the place that I've gotten. But hopefully, you as a listener, you're walking away saying, hey, I too can do this. I too can make a difference, but then also realizing, hey, I could use a little help. And, Marc is one of those individuals you can reach out to, and he coach business owners, help business owners grow to their next level. And so I challenge you to connect with him. And so as you get this episode, if you loved it, share it, because we always say, caring is sharing. So you want to share with those friends, and it's a lot better to build together. Hey, Marc, thanks a lot again. And if you didn't notice, we are frat brothers. So, but didn't know each other until we started this whole venture of HBCU Biz on Fire. So I'm glad to have connected with you. Look forward to some of the great things that we're going to do together. And I challenge you as a HBCU business owner and as a business owner, remember, be the best you. Because if you try to be anybody else, you can only be second best. And the world pay for the pathfinders and the different makers. And that's what you are today. So thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode of HBCU Biz on Fire.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate you. Have a great weekend.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.